Good evening, everybody. This is your favorite aspiring classicist here, a wandering author, reminding you that we're all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. And today, Aristotle's going to tell you why you shouldn't be soft. Or softness. Remember, we are in book 7 of the Nicomachean Ethics, chapter 7. And in book 7, Aristotle discusses the character traits that we should avoid. And softness is one of them. Anyways, let's get started. But in relation to the pleasures and pains of touch and taste, and the corresponding desires and acts of avoidance which have already been defined as the spheres in which profligacy and temperance are displayed, it is possible on the one hand to have such a disposition as to succumb even to those temptations to which most men avoid. These two dispositions, when manifested in relation to pleasure, constitute unrestraint and restraint respectively, when in relation to pain, softness and endurance. So, if we cannot resist or control ourselves in relation to pleasure, then we're considered either restrained or unrestrained. If we can't control ourselves, it would be unrestrained. But if we're talking about pain, that's called softness and endurance. The disposition of the great majority of men lies between the two, though they incline rather to the worst extremes. And inasmuch as some pleasures are necessary, and others not, and the former are only necessary within limits, excessive indulgence in them not being necessary, nor yet deficient indulgence either, and inasmuch as the same holds good also of desires and of pains, one who pursues excessive pleasures, or pursues things to excess, and from choice for their own sake, and not for the sake of some ulterior consequences, is a profligate. So, I know it's hard to catch everything, it's a dense passage, but Aristotle says that excessive indulgence and deficient indulgence are both wrong. So it's not that we should never amuse ourselves, but we shouldn't do it to excess. If you do it to excess, then you're a profligate. For a man of this character is certain to feel no regret for his excesses afterwards, and this being so, he is incurable, since there is no cure for one who does not regret his error. Which I think that makes sense. There's no cure for one who doesn't regret their error. That's what a profligate is. Somebody who indulges in too much pleasure without feeling any remorse. The man deficient in the enjoyment of pleasures is the opposite of the profligate. And the middle character is the temperate man. So you should be the temperate man. That's what Aristotle believes. And similarly, he who avoids bodily pains, not because his will is overpowered, but out of deliberate choice, is also a profligate. Those, on the other hand, who yield not from choice, are prompted either by the pleasure of indulgence or by the impulse to avoid the pain of unsatisfied desire. Hence there is a difference between deliberate and non-deliberate indulgence. Everyone would think a man worse if he did something disgraceful when he only felt a slight desire, or none at all, than if he acted from a strong desire, or if he struck another in cold blood, than if he did so in anger. For what would he have done had his passions been aroused? Of the disposition described above, the deliberate avoidance of pain is rather a kind of softness. The deliberate avoidance of pain is rather a kind of softness. I agree with that. If you're deliberately avoiding pain all the time, you're not pushing through, then you're probably a little soft. The deliberate pursuit of pleasure is profligacy in the strict sense. Self-restraint is the opposite of unrestraint, endurance of softness. For endurance means only successful resistance, whereas restraint implies mastery, which is a different matter. Victory is more glorious than the mere avoidance of defeat, hence self-restraint is a more valuable quality than endurance. So it's better to be able to resist pleasures than it is to withstand pains, in Aristotle's point of view. And I can see his point. One who is deficient in resistance to pain that most men withstand with success is soft, or luxuriousness, for luxury is a kind of softness. Such a man lets his cloak trail on the ground to escape the fatigue and trouble of lifting it, or feign sickness, not seeing that to counterfeit misery is to be miserable. The same holds good of self-restraint and unrestraint. It is not surprising that a man should be overcome by violent and excessive pleasures or pains. Indeed, it is excusable if he succumbs after a struggle. But we are surprised when a man is overcome by pleasures and pains which most men are able to withstand, except when his failure to resist is due to some innate tendency or to disease. People too fond of amusement are thought to be profligate, but really they are soft. For amusement is rest, and therefore a slackening of effort. And addiction to amusement is a form of excessive slackness. But there are two forms of unrestraint, impetuousness and weakness. The weak deliberate, but then are prevented by passion from keeping to their resolution. So a weak person, and this is Aristotle's definition, is somebody who really thinks through what they're going to do, but then their emotions, their passions, keep them from actually doing what they had planned. Whereas the impetuous are led by passion, because they do not stop to deliberate. Since some people withstand the attacks of passion, whether pleasant or painful, by feeling or seeing them coming and rousing themselves, that is, their reasoning faculty in advance, just as one is proof against tickling, if one has been tickled already. It is the quick and excitable who are most liable to the impetuous form of unrestraint, because the former are too hasty and the latter too vehement to wait for reason. So, yeah, and to sum all of that up for you guys, Aristotle says don't be soft. Yeah. What are y'all doing in order to inspire, uplift, and empower your local community today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part, and you can count on me to do mine daily. Until next time, I love y'all.